Hey there, future celeb, and welcome to How to Be Famous with Whitney Uland, a safe space to admit that you want to be famous. I'm your host, Whitney Uland. Now, I'm a big believer that the world will be a better place when more good-hearted people are able to make a massive impact. And if fame is calling to you, then there's an audience for you, and I'm here to show you how to find it. In this show, we are diving into the art of becoming a self-made celebrity. And no, you don't need $1 million ad budget or a team of Hollywood agents. I'm all about making a positive impact, sharing your unique voices, and ultimately connecting like-minded souls who also want to make a massive impact. So, join me as we explore the stories, secrets, and strategies to help you leave your mark on this world. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and even entertained, because this process is really about turning your dreams into a reality and finding the audience that's obsessed with you. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and together we will embark on the journey where I will show you how to be famous. Hey, future celeb. Okay, so I know that I've been telling y'all that I've been writing a book for like 6 months now, but let's be honest, I have barely started. Writing a book feels extremely vulnerable, and honestly, I keep self-sabotaging and just getting in my own way. So I decided to team up with selfpublishing.com and bring y'all a free virtual webinar on October 22nd at 11 a.m. Pacific time called How to Write and Publish Your Book, even if you haven't started writing yet. If you've been dreaming about becoming an author, or even if you're on the fence and you aren't even sure where to start, join us. I'm figuring all of this out too, and we will be doing it together. This webinar is perfect whether you want to become a thought leader through nonfiction or bring your creative fiction ideas to life. And if you can't join us live, no worries at all. You can still catch the replay with the link in the show notes, or head to selfpublishing.com/Uland. That's selfpublishing.com/Uland to save your spot. I'm really excited for this and can't wait to see you there. Hello and welcome to How to Be Famous with Whitney Uland. I'm your host, Whitney Uland, and I am so excited for today's guest. Today's guest is one of my personal role models, the one and only Christy Carlson Romano.
Wow, the one and only.
The one and only.
With all the names.
With all of the names.
Oh, man.
Mix it up. Didn't want to mix you up with the other Christy Carlson Romanos.
You know, there actually is a Christy Carlson.
Okay.
Weirdly enough. But that wouldn't have made any sense because that was my mom's maiden name.
Okay.
And
my first name is my mom's maiden name.
Oh, interesting.
Anyway, yeah.
That is interesting. I don't honestly, I mean, I know the lore of why we chose the three names, and then I tried to drop the Carlson for a while.
Okay.
So like when you go on IMDb, there'll be some things like as Christy.
Yeah.
It didn't work. And I was like, well, all right, it is what it is.
So now we got all three. I love it. I love it. Okay, so I always like to ask my guests, do you identify as a hero or a villain? And what's your hero/villain origin story?
Wow. Okay. That's crazy. So I feel like I've, come into the world of social media late in life, and I didn't play by the rules in a lot of ways. I kind of kicked the door open on YouTube and was like, I'm going to do a cooking show, and I have my production background, and so I'm going to just start making content. So when I started talking about my life and experiences, I kind of didn't care what anyone was going to say.
So cool. Did you? Okay, keep going.
Sure, no problem. I promise you, interrupting is my love language. So
okay, great.
We are good. But I didn't really understand how that might affect people and dysregulate people's opinion of me. I'm coming to understand why nostalgia is so important to people in preserving it.
Okay.
And I think I'm stepping away from it as a brand as a whole.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some people that might actually be happy to hear that. But I did it because it made sense to reintroduce myself into a new market, and I was not dumb.
No.
I knew exactly what I was doing the whole time. I had painstaking conversations about my brand almost every day for the last 7 years, because I'm not relying on a big studio budget to market me and all that stuff. So I think it was just a really wild approach. And so I think in some ways, in some rooms, I'm considered a little villainous.
Okay.
And
Maverick.
it can be a little disappointing because those rooms were the ones that I kind of was hoping to preserve that identification as somebody's, role model or whatever. But I think we move on and we grow as creators.
Yeah.
Especially independent creators.
Yeah.
And I think I only really care about being a hero to my kids.
God, amen. Amen.
That's that. So that's that.
I love that so much. So if anyone has been living under a rock and didn't know, so Christy, my favorite work of yours was Even Stevens and Cadet Kelly specifically. Like those two are my favorite. Was there and but something that I've really loved, and again, that was kind of I loved watching your career, you know, being raised in a like very conservative religion and not having, it was also the time of like Britney Spears, like the very hypersexualized
Yep.
young girls. And I think that you were just a really good role model to me and a good example. What was that? You mentioned, you know, I'm always telling my clients that on this podcast, we talk, you know, fame is just the resource of having people's attention. And once you have it, you can leverage it.
Right.
So it's something that you had, and then you leverage into having your own voice now. And I still see you as such a pioneer and so smart in the way that you've done that and kind of reclaimed your voice. And I think people always get a little upset when women do that.
Immediately.
Especially.
Almost immediately. It is wild to, and you know, like you were saying, you grew up with sort of this like first wave feminism that I was very big in representing. So all of the characters that I, you know, was cast in were those types of type A or like high performing brunettes, you know, with Cadet Kelly. Smart girls, you know, knew their boundaries, stood up for themselves, but had these sort of adorable qualities that made them very endearing to the average girl. It was very scientific and it was calculated feminism.
Oh.
And so now we're in this very like modern time where that first wave feminism's problems are sort of exposed when we talk about it and how it kind of fell in on itself. And I'm raising two daughters now, and I'm trying to kind of understand where my values lie as a mom and a parent and not trying to push anything on them and sort of have them just grow up, you know, in a feeling safe. More importantly, it's like, just be safe, just be happy. And that's like my number one focus for them. Now, when it comes to like the resource of people's attention, you and I actually have spoken. And so I have spoken to Whitney as a client / friend and parasocial relationship. We've connected online. And then I was like, oh my gosh, can we chat? And I'm sure we'll get into more details about this later, but I kind of never really understood my value. And so that's why I was so late to the game in social media, because I was in hibernation trying to live my life and sort of fight my demons, so to speak. And like, I had no idea what it meant to do that.
How could you? Like, I mean, you grew up in a fishbowl, like of people witnessing you as you grow, and to be able to metabolize that experience while you're going through it before your brain has fully developed. That's impossible. I would imagine.
And it's weird. It's like almost like you grow up in a fishbowl that's really, really cloudy. So people see you, you're like this bright colored fish, but they don't actually see you. They see some brightly colored version of you. But, you know, inside it looks very different. So I wouldn't say I was like the High School Musical kids had paparazzi coming after them.
Right.
And so much of my life was privatized. And I think that's probably the best thing that came out of the experience that I might have had.
Yeah. Okay, someone gave me the advice to ask my guests what questions I have. So I'm curious because I'm like, I feel like you could actually give me really good advice on this.
I'd love to.
If this is something you've ever experienced.
I actually don't even need or want to talk about some of those things, you know, about the past. So I'm real time. What can I do?
No, so something that I've like noticed, and I feel like, you know, people on the internet love to be like, Whitney, you're not actually famous. Like what? And I'm
Do they
like,
not get it?
and
Like, that's the whole point.
I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm manifesting it in real time. This is performance art here.
Yeah.
I'm becoming famous.
They don't
in
get
real
it.
time. They don't get it. But I think there is still like for the level of fame that I have, there are still changes that have happened in my personal life because of it, right? And just the way that people have interacted with me or not. And I think something that's been really hard has been, and I'm assuming that this gets harder the more fame that you have, is that people, it's kind of like if there's something that you're struggling with in your personal life, people almost don't really see it because they're like, yeah, but you have this, but like things are going well for you. Yeah. And I'm curious if that's something that you ever like experienced, or I don't know, like were most of your relationships people who also had the resource of fame? And so maybe then you like found that connection there and or I don't know.
Okay, so my husband served in the Marines, and so he and I connected later in life when I was like 26, I think we met. And
So late.
it's very late. So I was very
Past your
old.
prime, really.
Exactly. And I really kind of didn't have too much experience dating guys outside the industry.
Mm.
I had moved back to New York, and like when I met him, he was doing his own thing. He was like being mentored to be in media, but he also wanted to go to law school. I mean, he had nothing but opportunities ahead of him. And so when he met me, I was kind of like, had already lived this lifestyle and this crazy life. And so we kind of met in the middle. I like to say that like we had the same like pattern of baggage,
Mm.
but just different shapes and stuff like that. So we kind of both had these wild, crazy lives, which led him to the Marines. But then, like, when we actually got together, he was like, hey, I've been to war. So, like,
Big.
you, like, like you being a child actor or whatever it was, is not the same. You are not unique. You are not. And he didn't do it in a way that was deconstructive. It was more like, hey, how do we get you to understand that the world outside of you exists and that you have a finite amount of time on this earth?
Wow.
And like he shook me out of that. Only
Yeah.
he could have done that because I was so unique and I was so broken and I was like
Yeah.
clinging to the identity of being tragically beautiful.
Oh.
So that's why it was in some ways important for me to listen to the criticisms around me from those that, weren't in the industry at all. I do think that some of our critics, our harshest critics, can have grains of like constructiveness there. Like I think you can be like, okay, I can see why they were maybe a little bit right.
Yes.
But yeah, there's a lot of projection of people's issues onto folks like, even yourself that is finding their way into the public, more and more.
Mhm.
The more content you're putting out there, the more opportunity there is for these folks to say what they want.
Right. I think I've also wondered if for me, because I think it's a mix of like the level of fame, but also the level of being a coach. So what I'm saying is like me at my highest self.
Good.
And so it's not necessarily reflective of, so I think then people are like, oh, that's who you are all the time.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And it's,
You don't drink either, right?
I actually don't know.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Right. But it just is something that you've chosen.
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. It just makes me sad.
Yeah.
Alcohol makes me really sad.
Yeah. That's good. The higher self is also hard to locate if you're numbing out with any kind of things. Even if it's not an issue for you, it's like,
Mhm.
it's really good not to have that
Yeah.
in your life. And so many people are getting to be sober curious that I'm loving it. And Austin
Yeah.
in particular, where we are right now, is a really sober friendly like place. Anywhere you go, you'll see an entirely different drink menu for like sober or whatever,
Wow.
NA spirits and
I love that.
Mhm.
I also loved that. So I came here like a year and a half ago for a work conference, and I went out with the guys who were hosting the conference just as a networking, and they're like young 20s, and we went to like one of the clubs,
I'm
like
sorry.
at the Domain or something.
Oh, at the Domain. Okay.
Is
Oh
that
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Would that be
At the
right?
Domain. There's like a little strip of
Yeah.
bars. Yeah.
Yeah. So we go in, and I was just so excited because it was literally like at midnight. They're like, okay, everyone, like go home.
Yeah,
And I was like,
Domain
oh,
has,
thank
like-
God. I was like, because I like got there, I was like, am I gonna have to stay till like 3 a.m. Like
Yeah.
just in the name of networking? But
Yeah. In the name of networking. I love it.
That's actually like, I'm curious, did you ever like, I feel like the idea of Hollywood and of networking to me was very like, you have to go to these parties and you have to like be part of that. And
Yeah.
that's never, that's not, I'm like, maybe I just don't get invited enough to know, but to me, I feel like the networking doesn't have to happen in that way.
I mean,
did you feel like
it's
that
interesting.
it's changed or?
Okay, so sorry to interrupt you. See what I
Please.
said?
Oh my
I
God,
said that's
no,
my
do
love
it.
language. Okay, I have had to book all of my guests on my podcast for the last, and actually my YouTube stuff too, for the last, I don't know, I guess it's been years and years now. So I am exhausted, but I have a lot of fantastic parasocial relationships,
Mhm.
like the Drew Afualos, the Hello Teffys, like,
Mhm.
even like people that you wouldn't even guess, like Whitney from the Mormon Talk or
Uh-huh.
whatever. I have so many unique interesting. Like if I were to look at the Rolodex of folks that I've been able to meet just by DMing them and they, grew up with me or
Yeah.
they're interested in getting to connect, I didn't have to wait on an agent or manager or publicist or
Yes.
like no one. You greenlight yourself.
Yes.
That is what networking truly should be. It should be creator to creator. That's one of the most, I think, like, that's one of the things I'd miss the most is like the Rolodex I've created on TikTok, if
Yeah.
TikTok were to, be banned.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of the folks that I've connected with, yourself included.
Thank you.
And that's something that no one can even take away from you unless
Yeah.
you were truly problematic. And like, then people would be like, yeah, I don't really want to interact with her.
Mhm.
But in general, like I'm really happy with how I've gotten to know people. From there, as I more or less was like, okay, I am not living in Hollywood for a reason. And also I'm not trying to be cast in anything.
Mhm.
So like the fact that I am identifying more as an online creator is why I think I got invited to like VidCon. And so, are there parties that are there? For sure. But like, as you continue sustainably making this type of content, then those invites would come. And I think my mom used to tell me something like, no good comes at a party after midnight, which is, I
She's
guess,
just like me.
there you go. After midnight.
The opposite of Chapel Roan song.
Yeah. So it's like one of those things where I think after midnight, you got to know your boundaries and just be like, yeah, I've done what I've needed to do here. The professional relationships have either been made or this is something else entirely.
Yes, I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. So I'd love to speak about something that you just mentioned about you were saying, kind of changing that identity, that feeling like it maybe has shifted to you that instead of seeing yourself as an actor, seeing yourself as a creator. What was that like for you? I feel like that is such a mindfuck for my clients to just be like, but I'm an actor, I'm an art,
Yeah.
or
Well,
and
I
there's
have
a
thoughts on
grief
this.
to it. Yeah, I want to know. Like,
Do you
was
say
it-
there's a grief to it?
I think for some people it is.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a grief.
Yeah,
to it.
tell me, just word vomit at me. I wanna know.
We've talked about this too. I've loved talking to Whitney. I think if this was a testimony, I'd be like, please talk to Whitney, like be a client of hers. She's fantastic. But yeah, I've had to grieve many little deaths, I would say. Like the first one was when I realized that, I wasn't gonna like live in LA and like book Hallmark movies and, do all the things that it seemed like some of my peers were doing after a certain age. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't gonna happen easily. And so I don't like that it's not easy, I think. So that was sort of like an ego death. And I went back to New York and met my husband. And then I ended up trying to become a director. And when I realized that that wasn't going to come easy, like Disney essentially was like, hey, you're going to need to shadow people from, the ground up if you really want to be a director with us. And I was like, I would do it, but now I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
And so I kind of had hoped Disney would give me sort of like it would give me a leg up to kind of become a director because that was like trending at the time. And I already had a lot of production background. I knew that I had filmed a full length feature film. And so that was another little death of mine where I was like, okay, well, I know I have the ability to do this. I'm just not getting any green lights or mentorship too.
Right.
So like that was kind of like a different kind of little death where it was like I thought Disney would kind of be there for me in transitioning to behind the camera.
I feel very abandoned.
A little
bit.
I mean, of course, right? But like they don't owe me anything. Traditionally, studio executives don't get involved with the people that they work with. But I think seeing me grow up, I thought maybe, okay, well, yeah, maybe they'd give me a little bit of sort of like a trajectory, but that's just the way that the industry works. It doesn't really matter if they saw you grow up, like they just don't care.
Right.
So I had to sort of realize, okay, well, that's not going to come that way either. So I went back to school. It took me 12 years, but I finished the degree.
Congrats.
And it was like, okay, great. Now, I'm going to do what exactly? And it was a wild time of being pregnant, not wanting to act and do Comic-Cons all the time and saying, okay, how do I dig in and make a family business of this? So my husband and I put our heads together and we just started making the content. I guess what I'm saying is that grief for me was decades long. Of not going to Europe because I needed to live in LA and not leaving and going to a music festival and not doing things, not living my life because I was so fearful of leaving
Mm.
that fishbowl.
Right.
That
Right.
fishbowl, even if it was hazy, it still was like where I lived.
Yeah.
To jump out of the fishbowl meant a certain death.
That's so scary and so vulnerable. Did it feel like then? Because I talked, a lot of my clients about this, where it's like you're practicing in public when you start making content. Like you're doing a new skill, but people are watching you. And for a lot of my clients, when they're just starting, no one's really watching them. Like they're just in like 200 view jail for a
That
while.
sounds so sexy to me.
I was gonna ask, like, what was that like? I mean, did you feel like you then, as you started creating content, was that the process of finding your voice was in the content creation, or did you feel like you had a space to be like, this is my voice and now I'm gonna make content?
Yeah, I think if you want to call voice like my brand, I think that right now I'm in an interesting spot with that whole conversation of like authenticity and brand, and like having a voice comes into that sort of trifecta there. But I think I started doing that cooking content just because it was like, okay, now this is something we can do. We can greenlight this.
Mm.
We have the production skills to do this, and it's in our home. So we budget it, we control it. And so when it started taking off, it just really it was a rebirth for me. And it felt safe enough for us to get brands involved, and word got out. And so I was like reviewing like my subscribership recently.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, interesting how it was going up very gradually. But then when I started doing videos that were a little bit more like personal,
Mm.
that's when things started to like jump up
Mhm.
into like over 400,000 subscribers or whatever, from like 250, 300. So I just think it's really interesting to see how universally people want the tea, and they
Mhm.
want the exclusive access to your life.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of implications to that.
Yeah. How do you navigate that?
You can't. Like to
Yeah.
some degree you cannot. But I think it's like if you were famous in traditional Hollywood, the same rules apply.
Okay.
So like what I envy about somebody who's like authentically coming to their fame from like 200 followers or 200, you said 200 views, like they can fail upwards,
Mhm.
and that authenticity is found from like ground zero.
Right.
What I'm dealing with right now is like there's a camera here, there's two or three cameras here, and a microphone and all that stuff. I have to learn how to turn off my brain to be myself. And it
Yeah.
really sucks.
Yeah. What's that process been like for you to do that, to make that shift and to open up in that way?
I'm only just realizing it, and it's really new for me, and it feels very raw,
Mhm.
not necessarily vulnerable. I think vulnerability is like when it costs you something. It costs
Mm.
you nothing to be yourself.
Oh, snaps. Say that again.
And I've actually heard you talk about this too.
Yeah.
I think you've called it, what is it that you've called it? Do you know what I'm talking about? Where you've called it like famous, like something, you call it
Celebrity
something.
energy,
I think it
maybe?
is.
Or I don't know,
Yeah.
selling your consciousness.
No, I think it's that celebrity energy thing that you
Yeah.
talked about. Because then we talked about like how I told you, I was like, I just don't feel like I'm famous enough, or I don't feel
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
there's enough going on for me. I was basically just venting and complaining, and I shouldn't probably do that. But
That's what
she's there
that's
for,
what I'm
guys.
here for.
So, and when I spoke to you, you were like, Christy, why don't you see yourself as famous? Like you are, like just be yourself. And I think at 40, I'm finally ready to like kind of stop apologizing too.
Ooh, what was there something that shifted for you to get to that?
I think it is this overall approach to like just being exhausted of curating my content to be polished and colorful, and like, what do I got to do? What do I got to say to get this video out there to people?
Mhm.
A little bit of burnout.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
But if you're authentically being yourself, then like you don't have to make any of the mistakes that I necessarily made or didn't make or failed upwards, but on a larger scale.
Sure, sure. Well, it is interesting though, because I've worked with a lot of clients who, even though they did grow online, they get to a place where they have some life transition or a new hobby or a new something, and they're like, "But I've been known for this thing. How do I let go of
Yeah, I don't know
of
how.
that?" And
No, for real. Like, I don't even know how I can stop talking about the past, because people want me to talk about it so badly that I'm going to have to actively fight to
yeah,
to tell people I'm done. And then even that's ridiculous. Like, I think you're probably better off just like doing the thing, and then the people will find a way back
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah, I think
That's
so
kind of where
too.
I'm at with it.
Yeah. I think that makes the most sense.
Yeah, it's a little wild. And in some ways, like you were saying about the grieving, like I think then either you have to be really ready to put all that stuff to bed for at least a little while. Or, you there will be a little bit of grieving about it. You'll be like, oh, damn, I remember when it was easy to make this content because it was easy to talk about the past.
Yes. Right. There-
So you got to be careful.
Yeah. Do you have practices for self-care or maintaining your mental and emotional health that you have found over the years?
I have been hustling for a long time. It's weird to me when people online are like, when they comment things about, or in general, if there's any kind of sentiment about, I see too much of this, she talks too much about this. It's like, there's a reason why you're seeing as much stuff. And that's because there's a tremendous amount of work going into putting all that stuff out there. So for example, the company that my husband and I have founded, Podco, it's literally like I was financing Podco with deals from Walmart, like deals from, Eucerin or like whatever little brand deals that I was getting, they would add up, but I was reinvesting it into sort of trying to outcreate my brand's need for myself.
Yes.
I was like trying to be able to walk away from it, but that's not going to necessarily work, right? Like when you have never started a business before.
Right.
And so Podco was everywhere for a while. Like all our podcasts were top charting. And I think it was kind of just like, it was so much so fast that now I think we look back and we're like, wow, there was a lot of exposure. So something you have to be aware of is overexposure. And I'm sensitive to that. Like when I mentioned before about how people are like, some of your harshest critics might have like a grain of truth for you to learn from. So I think pulling back, but then showcasing yourself in different ways is really the best way to like shake that up, deepen your brand, pivot, all that stuff.
I love that. Someone had submitted and asked, say, like comments,
Oh, great.
haters, trolls. Like, what are your thoughts? How do you deal? Do you block? Do you ignore? Do you engage? Do you notice them?
Is this? I know. I'm like, this question's gonna get me in trouble.
Is it?
I don't know. Who cares? I've blocked in the past for my mental health. I've been very vocal about blocking people, and that makes them mad, which is so ironic. But
It's a boundary, I think.
There's certain things you just can't say.
Okay.
That's for sure. I mean, I think if anyone, I think they know that, but I think it is really strange. Who did I see the other day? God, was it you? It wasn't Teffy. It was somebody saying online, it is interesting how haters kind of just like dump onto you their, greatest insecurities and sort of expect you to react, and that gets them off. Like they really get excited and turned on and aroused at like even being able to have some sort of like part of your day. It's like having children and them having negative attention. And so it's a really weird thing. So that's why I've always blocked, because I'm 40 and I feel way too old for the internet at this point. So for me, blocking isn't a big deal. I think it's not fun to have haters, but I have actually, like, if anyone has actually watched any of my content over the last like 2 years, there's been this huge arc of me being like, oh my God, I just want everyone to like me. And then like I was like really angry at having haters, and then I was just like despondent at having haters. I've now come to the other part of that journey where I'm like, yeah, this is just part of it.
Yeah.
It truly is part of all of it.
Yeah.
As many haters as Taylor Swift, Selena Gomez, like anybody has. And it's part of being a female in media.
Yes, absolutely. Can I just say the post that I got the most vitriol on was when I called out Tom Holland at one point, and I was just like, he has probably never had one single person as a troll in his anything, but of course, just people love attacking women.
Oh, of course.
But yeah, and I would assume because when you were in kind of the Disney fishbowl, you didn't like haters still existed probably, but I don't
Probably, yeah.
know.
They just
But it's
didn't
like
have the forums
they
to
don't.
be able to.
Yeah, they didn't
Yeah.
have the platform to be able to.
Yeah, I think it's an overall like developmental thing where people just see people who are famous as non-humans, and so they have to say something so that they, I don't know, connect with the. I can't. Here's the thing, I'm so done trying to understand haters.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
you're talking to a person who is the biggest tryhard.
Same.
Okay. And you speak that language of like, I need them to like me, like I need them, need them, need them. And then you get so tired by a certain age. Or maybe there's something that happens in your life where you're just like, I physically cannot accommodate this level of anxiety and stress anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it is like Chaperone's going through it.
Yeah.
And now she's going through it even more. So I hope she's done something for her self-care.
I know.
You know,
I'm
'cause
always
it's
like waiting for someone to give her a referral to call me.
You heard it
We
here.
can chat.
I mean, come on. That would be so dope though.
Wouldn't it?
That would.
I feel like I could really help her,
Yeah.
you know?
Fucking manifest it.
Okay. Well, if anyone on the podcast knows Chaperone,
What would you tell Chaperone?
we would get into the subconscious and figure out what parts don't feel safe and
Yeah.
kind of like re-regulate from the nervous system level, because I think she's crushing it. And listen, if she doesn't feel like she needs my help, she doesn't. Do you know what I mean? But just to make the experience feel better for her, because I think that this is going to be, you know, I was just listening to Katy Perry on Call Her Daddy, and she was saying, you know, when your career kind of has this rocket launch, you can't even really be present enough with it to enjoy it. And I was just like, man, I wish I could have helped Katy during that.
Yeah. I wish you could have helped me when Katy Perry. And this is another funny thing. I did a YouTube video where I was like, Katy Perry got my record deal. And I'm like, she didn't technically get my record deal, but we were getting a record deal at the same time. People went and ran with that shit. And they run with anything that I posted. And I'm like, yeah, no, man, I don't care anymore. I'm good. This is just part of it.
This is just part of it, is having
This is just
everyone
part
in your
of it.
business.
This is part of it. Also, I think looks really good.
She looks fantastic.
She and Christina Aguilera.
Oh my God. I just saw, she just did the cover of something, and
Yeah.
it was just like,
Okay, so this is my theory about her. I think she got a ponytail lift, which is like where they do a
Oh.
lift, like basically like where your
like a face
ponytail.
one?
Like if you were to pull your, yeah.
Should I get it?
No, definitely not. But yeah, I think everybody's getting little things done here and there, and they all look fucking great.
I know. It's amazing. I'm so here for it.
Girlhood, I guess.
Absolutely. It's like it's like one of those. So I have veneers, and I feel like for a long time I was like, is this bad that I like cave to conventional beauty standards?
But does it work for you?
I fucking love it.
There you go.
I love it.
And I
it's
couldn't
like,
even tell that you had veneers, so they're great.
Dr. Olson did an amazing job.
Yeah.
I have to say. Shout
And
out
I have
to him.
extensions, and they work for me, but not for everybody.
Exactly. I tried them once and they weren't for me.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing, is it's like, you know, if we are going to look at how all of the ways that patriarchy has made us hate ourselves,
Mhm.
then we can't also be mad at ourselves for wanting to change those things that, you know, like,
Mhm.
and for me, it was like my teeth were something that I hated growing up. So I get when people have stuff they want to change, when you're constantly looking at yourself and being seen, and, you know.
Honestly, like I'm extremely chill about like 99% of things.
Okay.
I think when people perceive someone like you or me, like they're like, oh, they're super type A and they're super organized. Or they, you know, they seem like a bitch. Not you, me. I'm saying this for me. You do not. But I think that people will see that and just kind of like already make assumptions about a person. But like in reality, I think I'm one of the most laid back people that if somebody came to me with something and been like, I did this crazy shit, I fucked up, I did this, I would be so understanding.
Totally.
It's kind of weird, right? Where
Mhm.
it's like you think, you know, a certain thing of a certain type of woman, but like they're so much deeper and more complex than that. And sometimes I think that when you're famous, you can only be certain things and then you're not relevant anymore. So that's
Okay, wait, tell me more.
right. Like when we talk about how people are trying to see me sort of as these past characters, it can be so frustrating and demoralizing. When I was younger, I would say when I was younger. But to outcreate that, I see this time and time again with even the people who are our hosts on different podcasts. They've been trying really hard to reinvent themselves. It takes so many hours of content for them to reinvent themselves. Again, that just goes back to like, God, I wish, you know, sometimes it is really great to start from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a beautiful point also because I do have a lot of actors and the ones who don't have any type of connections, I'm always like, okay, here's your job. Become a creator, get 5-figure brand deals, invest that into your acting career, make a film, go take it on the festival circuits. You're going to be ahead of 99% of the other actors and you're going to get signed like
Right.
easily, right?
Right.
And everyone's like, no, I don't want to. Like, no one wants to put themselves online because it's so scary and it's so vulnerable. And everyone's like, I want to do the Hollywood traditional way. But I think to your point, that is, if you create a name for yourself, then you get to tell Hollywood who you are. You get to tell the world who you are instead of just being seen in the character, which obviously I'm sure you feel a connection to the characters that you play.
Oh, I love those characters. Are you kidding me? I'm
But
so proud of that.
yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, I have no problem with them. That's the
Right,
thing, right? Like it's
right.
like I have this animosity with the industry. Not
Mhm.
even I've never said anything. And this is the crazy thing. I've never said anything bad about Disney. I love Disney. I go to Disneyland. You know, there's certain executives there that are super cool and there's some that are actually trying to help kids in the industry and stuff right now. Like I have nothing to at the moment. At the moment
On this day.
on this day, I really don't. I don't have a desire to say anything that's counterproductive.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
totally.
But in general, yeah, I have nothing but positive, feels for most of the things I've done.
Let me ask you this. What do you mentioned mentorship earlier.
Yeah.
What do you feel like I mean, if we could wave a magic wand and gift or create some sort of structure for mentorship, like what do you feel like is kind of missing or like if there is an institutional change that could happen or if you think that's more of like a creator to creator?
Okay. So I felt like being mentored by the president of Disney Channel at one point. He primarily was like very supportive of me doing, different projects. And he wasn't, creepy in any way. He was just like almost like very parental.
Mhm.
And I really enjoyed that relationship, but it did come to a close at a certain point and it kind of broke my heart.
Yeah.
And it was, mentorships do have expiration dates.
Mm-hmm.
Role models can also sometimes have expiration dates because the role models change.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe what those role models represent to you at a certain point in your life, maybe you can say, okay, like for example, right now, I am looking at Courtney Cox's content.
Mm.
Courtney Cox is doing really big things with her content with being super funny. And she was like a type A girly archetype kind of person. And so I'm finding myself through her sort of as this like role model now. I didn't necessarily watch her on Friends religiously,
Yeah.
but it's really kind of fun to find the people that inspire you and kind of, you don't have to know them for them to mentor you,
Yes.
right?
Yes. 100%.
You can objectively almost like have a parasocial mentorship.
Mm-hmm. Just follow someone's career moves.
Yeah, and you can do some deep diving and stalking and kind of see the moves that they made and kind of just like reverse engineer their careers. And I used to do that with IMDb.
Mm-hmm.
I used to try to, just figure out how did so and so get to this point and how can I try to figure that out. So, and it was very helpful.
I love
At
that.
least to put things in perspective too for yourself. Because you're like, okay, I may not have as many resources as Courtney Cox, but like I did a video that is at now like over 10 million views. And it's primarily because I was looking at her content.
And finding that inspiration.
Yeah.
I love that. And like share as much or as little as feels, because I know sometimes with our goals, they're protective, but are there things that you see on the horizon for yourself or ways that you're things that are really exciting about your career that are ahead of you, places you want to move into? Like
sure.
what's next?
That's a really hard question. And I'd love to actually chat with you online about that because I don't think there's enough. You can never have enough planning for your goals. I think there's so many ways to interact with your goals. I think like you can manifest them, you can try to unpack them and think about, failures in the past and like how you've learned from them to achieve your goals. Like there's so many different ways of looking at goals. You can look at the growth aspects of those goals. You can say, okay, how am I going to achieve them so that I don't, take time away from my daughters? So, for example, me and Annalisa Vanderpool have a podcast currently called Big Names. Shout out to us there if you guys want to go check it out. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
And Annalisa and I, have had some success with doing like the Chicago dance. And, you're a musical theater girly.
Oh, yeah.
And so we were like, well, what if we manifest like actually doing Chicago? And while I think that would be really cool and everything, I kind of made the decision today, and this is just kind of me trying to be authentic. I was like, I don't think I want to do Broadway.
Mm.
I think like it won't serve my mental health right now for where I'm trying to take my brand and,
Yeah.
and uncertainty of podcasting in general for me and kind of just like rediscovering my brand. So like I am really excited on what's externally on the horizon for me. I have 2 really cool pieces of news that are going to be coming out imminently in the next like month or so. So I'm not sure when this is airing, but we will have some updates for you, Whitney.
Yay.
And I just have to work really hard though.
Mhm.
I think the other thing is like just when you think that you've achieved so many of your goals and you start to get comfortable is when you'll notice that like you've got to dig back into your goals.
New levels, new devils. Always.
Because like what I realized was I got really comfortable doing all these sponsored deals.
Mhm.
And then the market changed and I didn't have as many deals.
Mhm.
And then I'm flashing back to prior to socials. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have to go do Comic-Cons again. And there's nothing wrong with Comic-Cons. There's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. But it was just like the idea of taking my weekends and being away from my kids, really.
Mhm. Mhm.
Or like, having to hustle in different ways.
Right.
I also feel like maybe I'm coming off as a person who quits, but I'm actually truly not a person who quits.
Not at all.
I just think that like bandwidth wise, I've been doing this since I was 6. I'm fucking tired.
Yeah.
I'm so fucking tired.
Yeah.
So like, I just want to figure out a flow that I can continue to build off of.
Mhm.
But I will say that it takes work. You have to be dedicated to those goals.
Yeah.
Otherwise they will bite you in the ass.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, I'm glad we're aligned.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I celebrate, I mean, listen, like I was just talking to a friend today about her kind of decision to temporarily take the foot off of the gas of acting and pivot into a more aligned world for her. And it's like it's scary to do that thing and to do those things, but you have to say no to things in order to create the space for the career that you do want. And I think that can be challenging, but it's worth celebrating when you do realize like, okay, it sounds fun to go to Chicago, but that's not the fit right now.
Right.
And
I thought it was. And then when I kind of more reevaluated what it would take to take it seriously and to do all the work that would, it's not even something that they offered. It was just something like, hey, do I want to manifest this? Do I want to, get
set
in
the
shape
intention
for this?
behind it. Yeah.
For sure. Like whatever. Those are the goals that we're talking about. I think what hurts me sometimes too about being online is like I'll say things or I'll project goals or I'll try to sort of put myself out there and then folks will assume that I'm like trying to be bigger than my like they kind of want to put me back in a box.
Oh, fuck that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's part of it.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah.
But yeah, like when you ask about the self-care stuff, I think like you have to check in with yourself about like how much that might actually hurt and then say, okay, what is interrelated to my goals, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So,
It's hard.
yeah.
It's hard being online.
It is.
It doesn't matter how many followers you have or how long you've been in the biz. Like it's just hard.
But I think that again, and this was my selfish question that I just wanted to ask is, and this is my takeaway that you said you got from your husband. I'm blanking. Remind me his name.
Oh, Brendan.
So sweet. In my 5-second interaction with him one time.
I'm glad. Well, you can actually tell a lot from a first.
I think so.
Impression.
I think so too. But I love just kind of that he had a moment of being like, hey, this is hard, but like everyone's been through some shit. And I think sometimes that's a good reminder also because this career is hard and it is isolating and everyone wants it. And publicity and PR makes it look so sexy and so illustrious. But at the end of the day, we're all humans. And no matter what path you choose, there's going to be hard in it. So
Love that.
yeah.
Don't quit.
No.
Don't quit. There's no point to quitting.
Yeah, it's like, for what? So that the trolls can win?
Oh, no.
No, we're not letting that happen.
We're not letting that happen. Piss them off.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm so grateful for your time.
Oh, yeah. No, it's great to see you.
Yes, you too. Thank you.
Yay.
And that's a wrap on another episode of How to Be Famous with Whitney Uland. If you found today's episode helpful, then make sure to subscribe and leave me a review or tag me on Instagram at Whitney Uland. And if you didn't enjoy the episode, then feel free to keep it to yourself or go ahead and boost my SEO with your engagement. It's really up to you. And if you're ready to be the next big thing and you want to take things to the next level and work with me directly to become a self-made celebrity, then head to the link in the show notes where you can learn how to coach with me directly. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or gossip, then feel free to slide into my DMs. They're always open and I love hearing your stories, celebrations, and wins. Until next time, I'm Whitney Uland, and this is How to Be Famous with Whitney Uland.